All right. Welcome to Family Meeting, the podcast where we get shit done. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Jessie.
Awesome. So this week we wanted to try something a little bit different.
Yeah.
We wanted to talk about the some of the most pivotal moments in our lives. Would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. We don't know what each other wrote down, so I'm
No.
like, I hope that's what it is for you because that's pretty much what it is for me.
Yeah. I could just kind of like take it as uh not really moments, but just like the most impactful things in my life.
Yeah. There we go. That's true because some of my things aren't just moments; they're like
Right.
full events or
Right.
something. Okay. Well,
So what we did is we wrote them down on a
yeah.
piece of paper and then we switched. So we each have four in front of us. We were gonna do five, but
For some reason, we couldn't think of like.
no.
Yeah, but one, I'm like a couple of them. They're not like that dark, but like they're pretty. Like a couple of them are sad, or had to do with like parents or something like that. I'm like, maybe, maybe not. Maybe at the end we'll be inspired to talk about it. Who knows?
Yeah.
First thing.
Oh yeah, let's just get this out of the way. So we decided that we're not going to talk about like when we met or when we got married or when we fell in love. Like that's a given. Like
Yeah.
these are our individual, like as our own people,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
impactful moments.
Like if we hadn't met each other, these things still would have like helped shape us. I think. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Sure.
No.
I wasn't thinking that if we hadn't met each other.
But
I
no,
was just
but I mean,
thinking like
yeah.
independently.
And also, just a heads up for our dogs. They're not on my list.
They're not on my
I'm
list.
sorry to them.
But I
It's
might
nothing
bring them
personal.
up at the end.
I'll probably bring
But
them. Okay,
all right.
So ladies first, you can go ahead and pick one of mine.
Okay. All right. That's the paper. Oh, Clarence Wakefield.
Oh, really? We're gonna start there.
Yeah, we're gonna start with Clarence Wakefield.
It's not just the play
Mm.
that I wanted to talk about, but it's everything that kind of inspired the
Mm.
play. So it's gonna get heavy real quick. So in I want to say 2009 or whatever, I was hanging out with an old friend, and we were smoking reefer.
Wow, so cool.
We were partaking in marijuana, and something happened where I kind of had just a psychotic break, as the doctors called it. I didn't know what could have brought that on or how that happened. Like there was nothing in my life that was like so stressful that, or at least not obvious that would have like occurred. So I don't know. It was a very telling night. I spent the night in the psych ward. I haven't had any episodes since. Just for our listeners and viewers, I'm not an unstable person. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's not something that's ever.
It's not a chronic.
Manifested. Yeah, it's not a chronic thing. Well, it was a chronic thing for a night.
Oh God.
But yeah, no. So it was just that one night, and it kind of shaped how I functioned in the world. I didn't see like a noticeable like difference in my personality. You talk to people who have horrific drug experiences, and they say there's always something that's different after that happens. I smoked, done edibles since, and it's never been an issue. Sometimes I get a little paranoid, but that's about it. But no, and so in order to cope with it, I think much to the chagrin of the people who I was with at the time, because I jumped into this pretty quick and it was a pretty major event. I wrote a play, and it was the first play I'd ever written. That was.
And it took you a while to write too.
Well, it took me actually 3 nights to write the first draft, and then it took me forever to refine. In fact, this happened when we were on some insane. No, it was winter break, but we had just had a crazy long break in college for some reason. So I was with a lot of my old friends, and so we spent a lot of time together, and it kind of informed the whole process. And I wrote the first draft there, and then brought it back with me to LA, and they kept working on it in school. A teacher who has since passed away, Spencer Biglarian. I know everyone we know who went to school with us who had him, we all loved him, and he actually helped me do my first reading of it, and it was funny. He made me read the main character. I was like,
too close.
Yeah, Brandon Murphy and a few few other people were in it. It was awesome. And so um, from there, I kind of kept trying to get off the ground. I would like propose it to different like, we had like student productions and whatnot, but I got like denied and stuff. So I was like, crap, there's like no avenue for this. Cut to like 3 years later, I'm with you, and I want to give you credit because you're usually the person who pushes me into these kinds of things. But I don't quite remember. Maybe you can fill in the blanks how it happened. But we decided that we would mount a production of the show.
I don't remember
Yeah,
how it started
I can't
either.
remember what it was. I think maybe I had expressed wanting to do something. You're like, well, why don't we do your play? Because at that point, we
Yeah.
kind of heard.
Well,
about
I know
it.
the first thing that we did, you were working on it and you wanted to do a reading. And at the time, I was working at a theater, so I had access to the space.
Yes, that's true.
So I think that was kind of what kicked it off, is doing the actual reading and casting the reading and getting all that.
So we did the reading, and we tried to like raise money to put on the play, and we eventually you produced it, and we got it on its feet. It was
how many weekends did we do?
I was about to say it was 3 weekends, 4 shows each. We did break even.
Yeah,
it's hard to
which is actually
play.
a big deal. Like that,
awesome.
The fact that we broke even, we didn't go into debt, doing a show.
I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
I think, especially it's a show no one knows. I mean, it's an original work. But everyone who was involved really believed in the show, and they really enjoyed it as a show, which helped because they weren't shy about inviting people. And that kind of gave me another reason why it's so pivotal. Not only did my life change because of the event, but that show kind of changed my confidence. And like even when I don't write as much anymore, but when I do, I don't have like this. Like I'm usually pretty okay with what I do. I'm hard on myself, but I don't think it sucks. I'm like, no, I know how to write. And so, yeah, I think that it was a very frustrating and hard experience because I'd never done anything like that. I mean, I don't think that was such a big undertaking. We were getting married.
Yeah.
We were engaged at the time, so it was.
Yeah, we were planning the wedding.
Yes.
I was directing and choreographing multiple shows.
But yeah, and I'll never. And so it was probably the most fulfilling artistic experience of my life, and I'm still kind of chasing that dragon, so to speak. I want to do something else, but it's hard to kickstart a new project or something, but I'll never. One more thing about this, it meant a lot to me, this whole experience. But the thing I'll never forget is that you couldn't be there opening weekend, but you had left me. See, maybe I will get emotional, but you had like left me like these envelopes. I don't know how to describe it because it's maybe you can describe it better, but. It was like little.
I've forgotten about this.
Really?
Yeah.
It was like the sweetest thing. It was like little things like open this after you've opened the theater, open this after you've blah, blah, blah. Like all these steps, like don't open until you've done something on opening night. And you're just like saying like, stand on the stage, look around, take a deep breath. And I don't know, I'll never forget that either. So, and it was hopefully you did something that meaningful because I was bummed that you couldn't be there, but like.
Why couldn't I be there? What was I doing?
You're out of town. You're out of town. I can't remember why. And it was at a time in our lives when you're out of town a lot.
A lot, yeah.
So, but it made that easier. And by the time you were back and saw it, I think it was a lot stronger than when it was on opening. So, but yeah, and so that was, I guess, all of that, from Psych Ward to North Hollywood stage.
Yeah. And the full title of the play isn't just Clarence Wakefield. It's Clarence Wakefield is Falling Apart.
Yeah, Clarence Wakefield is Falling Apart. I like long titles, which is probably bad for things like SEO and stuff. But no, so I'm so proud of it. And I have you to thank for a lot of it. And I'm also grateful to myself that I didn't let a traumatic experience kind of. So I think I could have really gone the other way with it. So I threw myself into that play. It really it helped.
Yeah, and I didn't know you at the time of like the experience.
Yeah, no, we hadn't met. So you kind of I was tasered by cops that night. It was so. But I'm okay now. Again, listeners, viewers, I'm okay with talking about this because it's not like I'm like the Hulk or something like at night. Like I don't just freak out. It's fine. So yeah. So that's it. That's Clarence Wakefield. That's why I wrote that down.
Nice.
Starting off on a
yeah.
intense, but is this also? Yes, this is also. All right. So I'm gonna choose one of yours now. Oh, okay. Psychic.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I think I know this one. Sorry.
So okay, let me just preface this by saying I don't know if I believe in the psychic ability. I believe in like a sixth sense, and not like in the movie, like I see dead people, although ghosts exist.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know if I believe that like someone can tell you your future, and even if they can, even if there are very gifted people out there that can, that I don't know if I believe that everyone that is doing it as a living is one of those gifted people.
Yes, they usually are.
So I believe I was in New York on my like audition trip for the college that I wanted to get into, where my mom took me to a psychic. So I'm like 18, 17, 18. Yeah, I'm young and impressionable. And I had been to a psychic before through my mom. My mom always takes, I blame my mom for this. And the one thing I remember from the time before going was that the first time I went, they said I would marry someone who was a US citizen. And I thought that was very strange that they said that specifically, because I'm like, okay, like that's I don't travel the world, so where would I meet someone outside this country? Like, and they said I would have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. So the second psychic, the one in New York, didn't say the like marriage thing, but said that I would have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. That's pretty standard. That's pretty like whatever. Said that I would be married once, which I was like, sweet. Good work. Yeah. And said that I would be happy. And that's great. That's absolutely like that's what you want to hear, right? Mm-hmm. But I was in New York auditioning for an acting school, young, raring to go. And she said, you will be happy, but you will never be famous. And not that I want to be successful. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, the fact that she said that I will never be famous has stuck with me. And not that I want to be famous, but that like I feel personally like it holds me back in everything that I do, and that like I'm constantly thinking about that. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's so ridiculous that something that I don't know if I believe in is stunting me in succeeding in different aspects of my life. Because like I could be famous for murdering 6 people. Like she didn't say specifically. Right. So I don't know. It's really complicated. Like
I mean, that's an intense thing to hear someone say, because it's just so negative. It's not like, again, it's not like you need to be famous, but it's like you'll never do.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And I'm like, but and to me, like who is famous? Like Angelina Jolie, yes, famous. Mm-hmm. Sutton Foster, famous to me.
Yeah.
I could pull someone off the street and they would have no idea who that is. Chris, famous. Al Roker, famous. But if I go to, you know what I mean? Like if I go to, I don't know.
No, there's I know what you mean.
Georgia, the country, not the, and mm-hmm. I'm like, Christy, Yamaguchi. Like
what?
They're like, I don't know.
Please.
So like fame is also something that's like subjective.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I have let this one woman from, almost what?
12 years.
Yeah. Like have so much power over my thoughts. And yeah, like I don't know. It's just so weird. So part of me has always thought, suck up the $20 and go to a psychic and have them say something different.
I mean, that makes sense. I would.
but again, I don't think I believe in that.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do I, but going back to the original psychic that said your husband will be an American citizen. It's very specific. You are an American citizen.
I know. Well, okay.
No, but so we laugh at this, but to the listeners, like it.
I mean, okay, so like I'll explain. So
Be careful.
I know. I'm adopted, but I was actually as a little baby adopted from Tijuana, Mexico. So
Right.
I'm pure uncut Mexican.
You don't know that.
I mean,
you could be like a
I took
tourist
the DNA.
bastard child. You don't know.
That's true. But yeah, and so just to like have someone say like they'll be a U.S. citizen, like don't worry.
Yeah.
It's because like I was basically saved essentially from like a bad situation as a baby. So like literally day after I was born. So
yeah. So I just think that's like
US
very
citizen,
interesting.
so.
But I mean, if you look at the probabilities, you know what I mean, for someone to say you're gonna marry a U.S. citizen, like okay, that's like a female walk in saying you're gonna marry a male. Well, you have a 50-50 chance of getting that correct.
Exactly. So that is weird. Why did she say it that way?
I know. No. So that's the thing. So then the funny thing is though, I had, that was like some psychic that I had gone to like in high school at the state fair with my mom. And right out of high school, when I was going to Sac State, I started dating this guy who became, no, I don't know. I think he was 8 because he was born in Manila.
Oh, gotcha.
And I was like, oh, this is the guy I'm supposed to marry.
Well, look at you now.
Yep. No.
But yeah. So that's your psychic. So
yeah.
psychics in general, just
right.
experience with the psychic world.
Yeah. And it holding me back.
Wow, it sounds like there's something
fucking sucks.
Go of.
There are. And how do you do that?
I don't know. I mean, you gotta do what's best for you, even if it's just breathing it out or meditating, or even if you don't believe in psychics, I do think
just
that going to one is.
There's that lady down the street.
Like your psyche.
That's true.
There's that lady
yeah.
down the street. Because chances are, not to belittle the experience or shit on her, but chances are she was a con artist.
Right.
So even so, then it's probably worth it to at least try and
get conned again.
Yeah.
Or at least by seeing that it's a con.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like you need some kind of validation.
Yeah, I don't know. So if there's any psychics out there listening, please feel free to contact me.
Like, oh, we're real. Okay. So.
All right, my turn?
Yep.
Well, this is a long one. 99 MTV Video Music Awards.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
So, everyone who knows me, who listens and watches this, knows that I am a diehard Nine Inch Nails fan. In fact, under the sweater, I'm wearing a Nine Inch Nails shirt.
I thought you were going to say under this sweater, I'm wearing a Nine Inch Nails tattoo.
And I am too. I have a Nine Inch Nails tattoo on my arm.
But I just thought that would be a weird way to phrase that.
I'm wearing this tattoo under the sweater. And so I always think, because it's that music's had an indelible effect on my life personally, and I take music very seriously. I'm kind of a snob about it, but I do, everything from movie scores to pop music and indie music. I'm in love with it. I just love music. I'm a big music nerd. And Trent Reznor specifically has been maybe my biggest influence in all aspects of art, even like performance. And I've always psyched the 99 Video Music Awards for a few reasons. One, that's kind of like, that's the moment, what is it? Paul Thomas Anderson says this about Philip Seymour Hoffman. When you first saw him act, he said like the literal thought he had in his head is, I am for this man and this man is for me, like as an actor. And I had that exact feeling as a little kid. I was like 10, watching Nine Inch Nails perform an obscure song from their latest album. It wasn't like a single. It was just such a specific but me, and I felt like I was the only person in the world who saw that performance. And so ever since, I've been in love with Nine Inch Nails and Trent Reznor's like scoring and everything. And I kind of attribute how I approach performance and how I approach writing and how I approach like how I view art specifically to that moment in Nice Nails in general, because him on stage is better than, in my opinion, the best actor in the world acting in a play or a musical. Like it's just like next level to me. It's very electric, and so everything I kind of do is modeled off of that feeling and tone and level of commitment. And so that particular performance kickstarted
That's so
that
funny.
entire journey for me. And 10 years, 10 years to the day, or maybe one day after, I went to what was supposed to be their final performance, but he just can't stay away.
Nope.
In 2009, I made a road trip with a good friend at the time, Ricky, from the Bay Area to LA during that like weird 6-month break that we had in college. You were there for that, but like it was so weird. And so yeah, we saw like a 3.5-hour concert with them, like almost 10 years to the day after. And
That's
so it was
cool.
just very special to me. So, that's all. And
Nice.
see, first one was heavy. This one was
Yeah,
a little more
no.
lighthearted and cute.
That one a lighthearted one because I don't know if I have any lighthearted
I know
ones in
you
there.
might not. Nope, you don't. Grandma's cancer.
Okay, so okay, so my grandma and I were really close. I had actually moved in with my grandma when I was 15 or 16. I don't think I was driving yet. And then my parents actually like moved in like a couple months later, I think. And then I was there until I left. I did 1 year in college at home and then went to New York.
It should have been quiet. Now's not the time.
And so we were really, really, really close. So
Hey,
Mitchum is not going to be talking about this.
here, let me go get her.
Okay, yeah. So we were really, really close. Me moving into the home kind of put me in like a different place than the other grandkids. I became more of like a daughter to her, and that she was very active in like the raising of me in my teen years, and we were just close, like really, really close. She would refer to my grandfather and say, "Your dad." Like, no, Grandpa Mac.
Yeah.
And it was kind of good because like her and my mom didn't have like a close like mother-daughter relationship. So I feel like maybe for my grandmother, I was the daughter that she never really got to raise because she, didn't allow herself to open up and like love my mother the way that she loved me.
Yeah.
So in 2016, in October, I got a phone call from my mom saying that grandma had lung cancer. And it was so out of the blue for me because at this point, I've been out of the house for 10 years and, married, had my own life. I went home often to see the family and, would write letters back and forth with grandma. And we talk, once a week. But, to hear that she had cancer and that she was given, 3 to 6 months to live devastated me. And without thinking, my reaction was, I'm coming home. And I know I've always known that family has meant so much to me. But in that moment, I realized family is the most important thing to me. Like over, having a lot of money because I had just, started a new job and was like really, starting to work my way up, was almost probably going to be, offered a management position. And, I was, that was the time when would have been able to get back into directing and everything because we had just gotten married. So over my acting career and over, everything else, like, no, family is the most important thing to me. And I told you, I have to go. I'm quitting my job and I'm moving back to Sacramento. I can come back on weekends and you can come up and visit me because, we're living in LA and my family, my grandma and my mom and dad and everybody were in Sacramento. So I had decided that I was going to go. And we had been married like 4 months, August, September, October, 3.
No, it was like a year and 3 months because of.
Oh yeah, 15. Yeah, just kidding. So
still not long.
Still, like, for your first 2 years of marriage, you're still technically newlyweds.
Mm-hmm.
So, to stay and be separated from me, but I have to go do this was big for me. But then I have like the best husband in the world because your first thought was no. I'm coming with you. And you didn't have to. And, luckily you were working for a wonderful company that let you work remotely. And we packed up all of our stuff and put it in storage. And I left on Halloween. And you followed a couple days later. And we lived in Sacramento. I was there for almost, I don't know. Today was actually the day that I left 2 years ago. Yeah.
Came back.
Yeah, I left Sacramento.
Gotcha.
And came back here.
Yeah, so you would have been there for about
November, December, January, February, March, 5 months.
About.
And then I ended up going back when we both went back when they sold the house and we moved out. But yeah, so that whole experience of realizing that my family means more to me than anything in this world, and that you are the most supportive husband and will have my back in any decision that I make, and how important the important things to me are, was huge. And to obviously be there, through the last couple months of Grandma's life, and to be her friend and to be her nurse, and to be there at the end and help my family through like her death, and really help my mom and help of the selling of the home. And
you also had to take on a lot of the things that your mom just wasn't maybe like emotionally or just couldn't handle seeing her own mother that way. So you really had to step up in a way that you didn't have to technically. I mean, you could have said like, let's get someone to take care of this, but you really you took on a lot during that time that a lot of people normally wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And that makes me super proud of you too. The strongest, most wonderful wife in the world.
Oh, thanks.
Not just wife, but woman in general.
Well, thanks.
Yes.
All right, let's do another one of yours.
Cancer.
Woo.
I forget what I wrote now at this point. As heavy as it sounds, it just was an insane thing. So in high school, I played football for like a year and a half. And
you were the star of the team.
Nope. I wasn't. I was not good. But everyone always said, because I was always a big kid, you should play football. You should play football. And I was like, fine, I'll play football. To this day, maybe still one of the best workouts I've ever had. Because I was still big, but I was like strong. But I never enjoyed it. I really approached it like I was punishing myself for being fat and like wanted to like get in shape and be part of a community. But then one during the summer, during like our scrimmages, I forget how exactly it happened. I feel like there's a few things that happened, but we were doing like drills, and essentially someone like fell on me and my arm was like in this like locked position on the ground. like it was just like bad angle, bad timing, bad everything, and my arm snapped. Like I fell, and my wrist didn't go with me. So
Gross.
it was a perfectly clean break. On the videos, you see the scars from all my surgeries, but it was a clean break of both the arms and the forearm, the radius and the ulna.
Yeah. Both bones.
Both bones. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Both bones on both arms. Both bones in the forearm of the arm. So, yeah, both of them broke. Like, I don't know. Like, it was such a strange. Like, I don't know if you have this, that you've been in so much pain that you're in no pain at all. And that's what happened. Like I felt like this wash of adrenaline and everything. My body was like, "Don't worry, you won't have to feel this for a while." And like, it's the only time in my life I've ever had. Maybe the couple times I've had like a runner's high, where the same kind of thing happens, where your dopamine levels
You just
spike,
don't feel it anymore.
and yeah, it's just like this strange euphoric buzzing feeling. And so I was like just speechless, like holding my arm, and the coach like helped me wrap it up and everything. But they were great about it because they didn't want to be sued. And so I had, in the next few years, I have 3 surgeries, 2 of which to repair the arm. The first of which, and I hope my parents listen to this. I'll never let them forget this. The surgeon botched the surgery, and midway through the surgery, that consulted my parents changed the procedure, went from plates to a rod. Cadet, careful. And my bone grew wrong. I had a huge calcium deposit on my arm. It grew in, it healed crooked. So again, why we never sued, I will never know. I couldn't say, like, I kept telling them, like, we should sue, like we should like, I get mistakes, but that is like a conscious decision that a doctor made that was a screw up. Meaning,
yeah, it's not that they followed the original procedure and something went wrong.
No,
it was they changed the procedure and something went wrong.
It was solely on him, and he did everything wrong, unless I'm being fed the wrong story, and maybe they made the choice or something they don't want to admit,
right,
but I don't think so. Because that's just weird. Because my mom would just be like,
there's also like a lot of like random like legal paperwork that you have to sign that maybe like they couldn't.
Oh yeah, it was.
I don't know.
I remember seeing like my dad looking at it and be like, "The hell!" Like, oh my god! Like there was a lot of paperwork, but still, like there was still grounds, I think, for litigation, and we never pursued it. Oh, I would be debt free to this day. But the good thing that came out of breaking my arm, and this is kind of a common story. I've discovered people get injured in sports and they turn to art. And so I joined drama, discovered I had like a knack for acting. And from there, that's why I went to college to study acting. That's where I met you, and now here we are.
Well, okay.
This broken arm.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, let's go back to, I had like seen you around. I had like known known you a little bit, and then we had like class together, and you were wearing a short sleeve shirt, and I saw your arm. This sounds so silly, but I saw your arm, and I was like, oh, the scars are sexy. Like, so like that, your broken arm,
and nabbed you.
was a catalyst for our relationship.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would have, even if I hadn't broken my arm, I probably wouldn't have stuck with football, obviously.
Well, yeah.
But I don't know what I would have done. What would have happened to me? I probably would have. I do discuss this sometimes with people at work because there's a dude who studies architecture, and that was a huge option for me if I were like better at math. But architecture was like a big.
No.
Yeah. Or cooking. Those so basically acting, architecture, cooking, the 3 hardest professions to be successful in, would have chosen one of those. Would have set myself up. So maybe it would have been in the same.
You were always destined to struggle.
Probably would have been you anyway. But yeah, so that's that. Breaking my arm set me down a whole new path.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Weird, and I still can't watch people get their arms broken to this day.
Not even arms, but like any broken bones.
Because I still have that image in my head of my arm like dangling and stuff. And it was luckily it was a clean break, so nothing went through the skin. But still, it's still traumatic.
Dude.
I think it's that's like, oh, I know what's happening, but
Mm-hmm.
when it's just like it's
So
just
you just look
dangling
like
there,
rubber.
you're
You're like,
just
what happened?
it's strange and it's the weirdest.
I was babysitting these kids one
I
time,
hate this story too,
and
though.
I
This
kept
story
telling them
still
like, don't
sucks.
build this bicycle ramp, and they built it anyway. And one kid like went off of it and it hit his arm on the handlebar, and so he broke both, and both of his bones were sticking out, and then this part, like the wrist, everything down from his hand is like hanging, and he just like stood up and like didn't look at his arm yet, so he didn't know it was broken because his brain was doing that same thing that was like, you feel no pain.
I know how I feel.
And I was like, look at me, look at me, look at me in the eyes, like don't look away, because I knew the second he looked at it he would feel it, and it just bones sticking out, like blood dripping all over the place.
Ew, yes.
So gross.
That's great.
All right, read the next one.
Yeah. Let's see here, what we got? Beauty pageants.
Oh, okay. So when I was a baby, I was like 6 months old, my mom's really good friend, Peggy, she was an amazing, and probably still is, I don't know if she does it much anymore, but an amazing seamstress. She used to make the most gorgeous pageant wear on earth. It was beautiful. And her daughters were in pageants for the longest time. And so when my mom had me, she was really excited because, I was a girl, and she was like, put her in pageants. So they put me in a pageant when I was like 6 months old, which is hilarious because you don't walk, just get carried around.
What is that? Yeah.
Legit. It's just
baby?
Pretty much. And then they look at your pictures and all that stuff. So then, jump like, a year and a half later, 2.5 years later, where I'm 3, or not even 3, 2, 3, I don't know, really, really young. And my mom finally let me stay up because like pageants go on for like a long time, and like they're weekends, and she let me stay and like watch one of the talent portions. And there was this girl up there like singing and dancing, and all of a sudden I just start crying. And my mom's like, oh my God, it's like nap time. Like, what's wrong? Are you hungry? Like, what's wrong? And so I turn to her, like tears in my eyes, and say, Mommy, that's what I want to do. And so to know at such a young age that like that is something that, inspired me, and like I wanted to do that. My mom put me in vocal lessons when I was really young. I started dancing. I have a degree in musical theater. So just like that moment took me on my, although that was like 91.
Young, it was much more like
but I just think that at that age to know, like that's what I want to do. And yeah, I thought that was crazy. And Peggy has had a huge impact on my life in general. So not only did she get me into pageants, she made, a lot of my pageant clothes. My dream role is Maria in West Side Story, and in high school I got to play that part, and she made me that, like the same like white dress with the red like ribbon, like she made that for me. And she used to have, when I was doing pageants, this little tiny teacup Yorkie named Ariel, and she was like a pound. She was so tiny, and I loved Ariel. And then she got into breeding, and she breeds show Yorkies. So her dogs have been been in Westminster. They're on the cover of, the Yorkie or the magazines and everything.
And speaking of fame, in those circles, those dogs are famous.
Yeah. So I've always wanted one of her dogs because they remind me specifically of Ariel. Not that they look like Ariel. They don't look like Ariel at all anymore. But and I don't think they're related. I don't know. Yeah, just one of her dogs, just because like she was the one that turned me on to Yorkie. She's So I've always wanted one of her dogs. They're so expensive. And when we were getting married, we got married on August 8th, and on August 20th was the Clear the Shelters Day in LA. And we had planned, we're gonna go look at dogs. And at our wedding, Peggy was there, and her husband Rich says, "Hey Peggy, tell her what the other part of her present
Bear in
is."
mind, this was the reception.
Yeah.
The ceremony was over, so she had just pledged her life to me and
Yeah.
everything. Like, this is the most romantic thing that already happened.
And then the best part of the wedding happens
Yeah.
when Peggy tells me, "We have whenever you want a dog, you can have one." And I lost it. Oh my God, I just like started crying. It was like a lifelong dream, coming true. And she's like, "We have a little boy. I don't know if you want him." Because she thought I'd want a girl so I could like dress her up and stuff. But we dressed Cadet up all the time. So
Yeah.
Cadet is a wedding present
Yeah.
and is one of Peggy's dogs.
Yeah.
So I mean, every day I'm thinking of her. And we didn't say Cadet, but I'm just going to talk about Cadet right now because we're already talking about him.
Yeah.
Really though, he has had, but we have a life, and we consider our dogs our children. We don't have children. We're not, to the point where we're, ready to have kids, just yet. So these are our children, and we feed them the best food that we can. We, make sure they're, like mentally stimulated, they're like emotionally taken care for. Like these are our babies. But having Cadet has really shown me that I can be a good mom. And I never wanted kids, really. Like I used to want kids like when I was like really little, and then like I didn't want kids for like the longest time. But having Cadet has showed me like no, like you'd be a good mom. You're very loving. I have that like emotion when I like see him and he's like hurt or he's sick, or or even when he's just really cute and you just want to squeeze him so hard because like, you just have so much love for them that you want to just like pop him.
Yeah. You want to just murder them?
But yeah, so Cadet.
I know.
And then I love Midshipman too. I do. She's our second baby, so she definitely has second baby syndrome.
Yeah, we're definitely a lot less careful with her. But
we also had Cadet from a puppy. We had him when he was a baby.
So we had to learn how to like nurture him and take care of him. Mitty is actually pretty good independently already. And it's different. This is a different thing, but yeah, I think they just real quick too on them. I think they really taught me what it was like to care about a helpless life.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Like a life that needs you. Like they need us. It's not like while I care for you, if I'm gone for 2 days straight on a trip, you're fine. You can take
I
care
will
of yourself.
survive.
Yeah. They can't. And they depend on us. And that really, it taught me a lot about responsibility. And just, obviously, it's nothing like having a real kid. I'm not saying, but like, hey, buddy.
Deliveries are being made right now.
So it's not like it's the same thing, but at the same time, it just really taught me that, at least that aspect of parenting, and like what to, the day that we decided we want to have kids or something, what that kind of responsibility means.
Yeah.
So, all right, you go.
All right, let's see. Oh, you did that one. This is your last one?
Yes.
Yosemite, 2006.
Oh, this is a cool one.
Okay.
So, I talk about this a lot, and the reason why I wrote it down is because it's been coming up a lot lately. And,
Yosemite?
Yeah. Yeah. But specifically in high school, and this is a very lighthearted one. So, it was a summer program where it was all environmental biology. So we would go out. One of our things that we would take care of this natural area in Santa Clara, where I grew up. And like help plant things, water things, preserve, pick up trash. And another thing was we would go on backpacking trips. And so there are 3 trips, and each student would go on 2. And so I went to Point Reyes, which is like a 3-day trip, and then Yosemite, which was like the big one. I think pretty much everyone got to go because everyone wanted to do it. It was a 5-day trip. And it was me and like my friends, like Alicia and Casey and Andrew and stuff. So like we had like a crew, and it was like the coolest. And there were 2 teachers that took us, and that trip started off with river rafting in Stockton, California, which was, or Riverbank, not Stockton, but I think so. And it was awesome. So it was like my first river rafting experience, and that like really taught me, like, it was a lot of responsibility. When we went to Costa Rica, which was actually close to being on this list. River rafting's hard.
Mhm.
And that was like the first time that like I had been pushed to do something where it was like absolute teamwork. This is dangerous. You're young. Please be focused. And so it was like one of the most challenging things, at least the way I remember it. And then the actual trip in Yosemite was 4 days, and it was the hardest thing I'd ever had to do. Um, it required so much of me. And one of the things that I think I've taken with me ever since was um, I had no choice. I couldn't quit when I was there. There was no turning around,
Mhm.
especially when you're like the end of day two. Like, no, we're midway to the end. You have to finish, save for like some injury, But and it really taught me that like to, I guess, not quit things. Like it was a very, it was probably the most weight I'd ever lost. Like at once, it was the first time I'd ever experienced what it's like to like have your body be so deprived it doesn't want to eat.
Mhm.
Like you have burned so many calories
Mhm.
that you're just it wants to die basically. And so it was all around like the most difficult, but to this day, and I want to do something like it again. It's harder when you get older because you have jobs and
Mhm.
responsibilities. This is a field trip, so it's built in to everything. Like it was something we paid for, but I never really went backpacking since, and this is 13 years ago, and I still think about it.
Mhm.
And it just taught me a lot about like survival and self-preservation.
Mhm.
We camped off trail. It wasn't like we went to,
Like a
houses or
cabin.
RVs or cabins or anything. Like we had to pitch tents and help each other out and cook food. And it was the first time I ever heard other for the most part, but there was always that one student that people just
Mhm.
don't like, especially teachers. And the first time I ever heard a student or a teacher say, uh, fuck that student's name. Like, and he shouted it. Because, like, the kid, like, there was two groups. So he was already gone with the other group.
Mhm.
And I'd say his name is Smith. It was a Smith. I just don't want to drop a name. And I was like, oh, yeah, something he brought up. And the teachers went, man, fuck Smith. You know what? Fuck Smith. And I was like, okay. Like in high school, it was the coolest thing a teacher's
That's so funny.
ever
And the funny
done.
thing to think about, because like when I think about teachers, especially being young, I think of them as like so old. That teacher was probably your age.
Oh, I think he was like, yeah, or he was just a little older than I am now. He was like in his like early to mid 30s.
Right, right. So I mean, like
Yeah.
that's you. I could totally hear you saying "fuck Smith."
Fuck Smith, dude. The kid's a bitch.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and that's how it was. And it was still like one of the coolest, funniest things that
Mhm.
like ever happened. I mean, we were with like the pot smoking teachers and stuff.
Yeah,
It was
the
like
cool
the
ones.
cool teachers, but still. So yeah, that my final one is Yosemite 2006.
Nice.
I'm
That
gonna
was
go
good.
backpacking now. All right, so you have one more.
Yep.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah.
You know,
I wrote it.
So, okay. Before I say this one,
Mhm.
actually, when you're done, I also want to talk about the same
I'm
thing.
sure you'll chime in.
Which is, I guess we can both talk about
Yeah.
this, but I'll let you lead. Being adopted.
Yeah. So I'm adopted.
Perfect. All right. Bye, everybody.
Great episode. No, I'm adopted and I have an open adoption. So I know my birth mother, I know my sister, I know like my birth mother's mother. Um and everyone always asks like, "Oh, were you ever in an orphanage?" And I'm like, "Okay, it's not fucking Annie." Like
Yeah.
like no.
Like angels in the outfield. Like,
Like
you have a foster family.
Like no. Well, no. So that makes more sense than being in an
I guess, yeah, that's
orphanage.
true.
Like let's like there's so many more kids that go through the foster
Mhm.
system that eventually get adopted than an orphanage. I can't name a single US orphanage.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's always the question that people ask. I'm like, no. And I was never in the foster system. I was never like my parents knew that they were adopting me when I was still like on the inside.
Just kind of more of like a Juno-like situation.
Yes. She wasn't that young, but yes.
Yeah.
But I've always known I was adopted. So there's never been that moment where my parents sat me down and said, BT Dubs, like um I've always known that I've had a sister. She's 4 years younger than I am. So I guess I found out when I was 4 that I was gonna have a sister or had a sister. Because I don't ever remember being, told like surprise you
Mhm.
have a sister. Um, so I feel very lucky in that situation that like I've never had that like shock of what. And if you also look at my family, I don't look like my family,
No,
like, as a whole, like, if you just look at my mom and dad, I could have probably,
maybe.
definitely, like, been maybe, like, their kid, like, my family as a whole, like, they're all, like, blonde-haired, blue-eyed babies, you know?
You kind of have a natural tan
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, yeah.
A little more
Um,
melanin and
yeah.
stuff.
So, I mean, there was always that,
Mhm.
Um, so I've always known, but I feel like that has been a like subconscious reason that I am so into the history of my family and the background of my family, like knowing where my grandfather came from, like
Mhm.
what brought grandma to Sacramento. And when I say my family, I am always speaking about my adoptive family. And there's been so many people, like other podcasts and other articles and other videos saying, like, stop saying, your real parents
Oh yeah.
in regards to your biological parents, because my real parents are Rich and Carol Norman, who
Mhm.
currently reside in
They
El
raised you.
Mirage, California, or Arizona. Like
Mhm.
those are my real parents. I have a biological mother,
Mhm.
and I love her. She gave life to me. We're almost twins. Like it's kind of
It is
scary. Like
unnerving.
but the like my real parents and my real family are my family.
Mhm.
So just to clarify, when I'm
Yeah.
speaking about my real family, the family I grew up with. Um, so yeah, I have this like urge to document everything about my family and learn as much as I can and be this like historian for my family. Um, and I feel like maybe I would have felt that way not being adopted, but I feel like because I am adopted, like technically, on a technical level, I'm an outsider to my family. So I
Mhm.
feel like I'm slightly more objective to, all the stuff that
Yeah.
went down like in the history of my family. Um, but I just have this like,
I mean, you tell me, but I think part of it too might be just like it's not to say it's not to say it's any less special to be just naturally, with
mhm,
biological parents as your,
mhm,
full-time family, but like there's something special about being accepted into a family
mhm,
that technically didn't need you. Like
right.
there was no it took an extra amount of like, yes, let's take her
Mhm,
in and
mhm,
love her just like
yeah,
we would, even though she's not
yeah.
related by blood for the
And
most part.
yeah, that was something I was going to bring up, especially about grandma. Not that
Hmm.
she's, excluding of anybody, but that, for me to be so, like, it was never questioned with
Yeah.
anybody in my family.
Yeah.
Like, I've always been one of the cousins. I've always been my brother's sister. I've always been, you know,
Hmm.
a niece or, a granddaughter. There was never that. Um, but yeah, you also
Yeah, people always say
are
that this is like the
adopted.
cutest thing that we're both
And I think that's
adopted.
so weird. I'm like,
Oh, you found each other. I'm like,
it's like, oh my gosh, you guys
millions of
live with
kids
your
are adopted
biological
all
parents
the time.
and you're married. Oh my God, you guys found each other.
But it's so funny. Yeah, but no, and I did not have an open
No,
adoption.
no.
I could know less about my biological family, but it's fine. It's also adopted from birth, as
Hmm.
were you. And I think I had the same, like I was adopted from a potentially terrible situation in Tijuana, Mexico, or I could have been the heir to the El Chapo kingdom. I don't
Hmm.
know. I keep
Hmm.
joking to this day that El Chapo could be my bio dad. I'm just sitting on money right now that's not
I
going to
think
me.
he's gonna lose all that money.
Let me
So
get it before it goes. I need to find out if I'm good at digging tunnels. But I also never had, like, there was never that moment where anybody in the family ever questioned, um, my mom, she couldn't have kids
Mhm.
uh, herself. And I know she wouldn't mind me sharing that. She's always so open about that. But, um, the fact that they had me, I think the entire family, at least on our level, like they I don't think she told anyone she was going to get me. She barely knew because
Mhm.
it was like a once in a
Yeah.
lifetime thing that my now godmother helped set up. And so, yeah. And so I think even when she brought home a baby, everyone was like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Like, she's been
Cool.
wanting this and she couldn't. And just from jump, I was always one of the family. And, I think on a side note, because of that, I think I need to be outreaching as I probably should be. But yeah, and so I'm also adopted. It is special that we both
Mhm.
are, but it is funny that people think that we found each other like through like it was some kind of cosmic thing. It's cute. I mean, it's cute
It's
to
cute.
think that way,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with it. But it's
And
just
I
like
can
we
see
don't
that
view
from
it
like
that
an
way.
outsider, because being adopted is so it's rare.
Mhm.
Not rare, but
Oh, it's
it's rare.
rare in general because so
Right.
many
But
people.
then to have like two people that are I can see that, but because it's so normal
Yeah,
to us,
I'm like,
that's
all right,
like, okay.
cool.
But I do think that that because we are adoptive, we've talked about this, that if we can't have kids, and even if we can have kids, we are very open to the possibility of
Mhm.
someday adopting ourselves.
Yeah. Uh, Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, like, I totally agree. And to me, it's not even like I don't even know, like, if an opportunity presented itself before we even thought about like really, really trying to have
Hmm.
kids, but we knew we wanted to
Hmm.
someday. Like, I would even adopt a kid before. Like, I just am
No, no.
so like, don't even think about it. I'm just like, yeah, it's not like a secondary option to me.
Hmm.
It's just like an equal
Right.
level
Right.
option. And I'm sure, I mean, as beautiful as childbirth is, you could dodge that bullet.
Just
The
saying.
body will thank you. But no, and so I really, yeah, I'm so open to it.
Yeah.
I have
But
to get
yeah,
a bank account that'll also be open to it, but I'm so open to
that's true.
it.
That's true. But yeah, I think I it has not that it's had like a negative impact on my life, but I feel like there is um not like a disconnect, but there's just always um that like wanting to make sure that I'm loved. And like I know that I'm loved
Mhm.
and I am so crazily loved, but like always just like wanting like I love not that I give gifts for the love, but like I always like I'm giving so much and
Mhm.
like wanting to make sure that like everyone knows that I love them and that I appreciate them and that I don't know if
No,
that's
it makes
making
sense. It's
any
not even a
sense.
bad thing, but like I've noticed, and this is not a bad thing at all, so I don't want this to sound critical or for you to take it that way. But you are, I think, just naturally a little more sensitive to your family's
Mhm.
attention
Mm,
and kind of
mhm.
what they who they bestow it on. Not in a good or bad way, but I think you're more hyper
Yeah.
aware of things like that. And I just think, yeah, I think maybe somewhere in your subconscious, maybe this is along
Right,
with I
right.
think
Yeah.
something else to let go or something. But yeah, I think you're just naturally a little bit more uh, drawn to that, and you have stayed away,
Mhm.
and so you're still. Cause I don't have that with my family, but I also am not as I guess attached. That sounds bad, but like I'm not as
Mhm.
involved with their lives as
Yeah.
as you are with your own. So, but it's okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, and oh, fun fact: something that you did remind me when I pulled being adopted for you. Another thing was another moment, real quick, that was really big in my life was my 11th birthday because that was the day that I was
Oh.
officially told. Even though apparently when I was a little kid, I guessed it, and my parents were like,
No.
"Well, just keep watching TV. We're not ready for this." But then my mom told me in a car ride one day on my 11th birthday that, all right, let me just set the record straight. So I'll always remember that too. It's such a weird, but it wasn't weird.
Well, because you knew.
Yeah, I knew. I think deep down I knew because when I guessed it before, it was like years before. I was like 3 or 4 or something. It was just like a little kid. Like I saw it adopted kid on TV. And I was like, "Am I adopted?" And the parents were like, "Not the time."
Yeah.
But yeah, when I was told, it wasn't like a traumatic thing. I was just like, "Wow, you want to know more?" So
Yeah.
yeah.
Something that I've thought about sometimes is that like you've never experienced this. And so I hope that someday we have kids so that like we have biological children so that you can experience this. But there is something different about I mean, I love my mom. I love getting hugs from her and like I
Mhm.
love like touching her, like, you know what I mean? Like the feeling of
Yeah.
like I always want to remember that so that someday when she's gone, like I can remember that.
Mhm.
But there's something different about touching someone that is you.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's that like when like you're in a new relationship or like you accidentally like brush against someone,
Mhm.
there's that feeling of
Mhm.
like, oh, like you don't have that comfortability. Say it.
Comfortability.
Yeah. So you don't have that, so then it's like that new like whatever because I don't see Terry and Jenna that often. But there is something different about when I touch them versus when I touch anyone else in the world. And to me, it's that like, no, I'm 50% you.
Mhm.
And I don't get that every day. So I think that people that, live with that every day, grow up with their biological families, that
Yeah.
blood, you know what I mean? Um, but I notice it for sure. So I hope that someday we can have
Yeah.
biological kids so that you can feel that and I can be like, see, this is what I mean.
Hopefully.
This is what I'm talking about. But yeah.
So yeah, that's it. I
So
mean,
those
there
are
were
8 or
it
kind of
was
9.
like 9 in the
Nine,
end
yeah.
because I threw my own adoption thing, but
And cadet.
cadet. So it was like 10
Yeah.
pivotal things that have happened to us in some
Yeah.
way.
Most influential things.
11
There's
before
like a
they
whole,
shouldn't
yeah.
have.
But there's a whole bunch more, obviously.
Yeah.
But those are just some of our stories. And
Maybe we'll do this again.
yeah, I think we should. I think it's good. I think we could do a whole bunch of different things, like places. I mean, you did a
Ooh.
couple like locations,
Mhm.
but places or books or movies or actor, I don't know, something. But there's a lot to do. So this was a little bit of a different
Yeah.
episode.
Thank you for
Thank you for listening.
joining
Getting
us
to
on this
know
trip.
us a little bit better
Yeah, I felt like you really opened
was a
up.
little roller coaster.
Both teary-eyed.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did. But yeah, so in that case, I mean, it's not the usual family meeting,
No.
so to speak, but still, everyone get shit done.
Woo!
Yeah, and start thinking about your own pivotal moments in your life. It's nice to look back on it. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
think it would be this intense or enlightening to
Mm-hmm.
me, but I feel really good right now. So
Yeah, I
all
feel
right,
good too.
I love you.
I love you.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.